having a conversation over here on the left monitor with Tim and Chuck. Yeah, I see that, Tim. Chuck's trying to give me some good news. I don't know what that is. Hopefully it's about something interesting. Excellent. The launch page for our Kickstarter is being shared all over the place. I think, anybody, do we have sound? Do we have sound and video? How are we looking? I see nothing popping up in the thread over here. And there we go. All right, Bake Sauce has let me know that we have sound and video, so that's always a good thing. Oh, Lord have mercy. All right, something to look at. So Tim just sent over an article. How's it going, Bake? How's it going, Neil? Commander Pete, Willie? Tim just sent me over an article on how to. We've been upgrading the Troll Lord Games store to email everybody with shipping information, so that you'll get a tracking number for your order and all that stuff. And there's a couple growing pains with it. Mainly, we got to remember to actually physically do it. So I think Tim has found something to make that a little, hopefully, to make that a little better. There's too many software packets that we're using all the time. We got to be careful that we can't lose our discount with stamps. We got, for those of you overseas, we hey, Clever, how's it going? We very tentatively have a discount for shipping that goes outside the United States. We do so much bulk that it seems like they have given us a 20% discount. We're having to refund money here and there to folks who overpaid on shipping for shipments to England or France or wherever. I'm not 100% certain that's actually happened. Maybe it has, but the numbers are sort of playing that out. We're about to raid in. I'm not sure what that means, Zerathon and on, but I know what a raid is. Are we doing a raid or someone raiding us? I'm not sure what's happening. Regardless of who is being plundered, it's all USPS. All right, we'll test a few. That'll work. We are getting raided. All right, there we go. That sounds a little more, probably a better idea than us doing it, since I have no idea how to raid. I think Chuck's on hand somewhere. Of course, we are here for GM's Tricks of the Trade special virtual Greyhawk Con edition. Should be a lot of fun. It's really kind of an open forum. I'll go over a couple of subjects that we frequently touch upon, like equipment and NPCs. These come up in our GM's Tricks of the Trade Twitch show all the time, so I'm going to tackle those, stuff like that. But it's an open forum. Whenever a subject comes up or you have a question or something, throw it in there. I'll do my best to answer it. And we do this show regularly every Thursday at 4 o'clock Central Standard Time. If you can join us, certainly join us. But a lot of it's just meandering around the gaming fields of of our collective experiences as we work the tricks and the trade all into just an hour-long conversation. It's a lot of fun. Join us on Thursdays if you can. I do an Ask Me Anything show on Tuesdays as well at 4 o'clock, so you're more than welcome to hop in there. But today we're doing a special edition for Virtual Greyhawk Convention. I'm going to be in a game tomorrow with Luke and Chuck, and Luke Gygax and Chuck and some other luminaries. I think I was sent a list and I've probably forgot who said luminaries are. I don't know. Somebody. It was it was somebody. But there you go. But tonight we're just going to kind of dive into. We're going to wait a few minutes, let people gather up, let links get out, raids occur, things move forward, and then here in a few minutes we'll dive into it and start talking about it. But For those of you new, to the Troll Lord Twitch, please give us a follow. We sure appreciate it. We're building this channel more and more. GM's Tricks of Trade, Ask Me Anything, Haunted Holler Painting. It goes on Wednesdays. Chuck's running a game on Saturdays. I'm going to start bringing games over. So it's a slow but ever growing process over here. So definitely give us a follow if you have not. How much was the design of your World of Source inspired by the World of Greyhawk? M5, this is the absolute perfect place for that question. And though it has nothing to do with GM's tricks of the trade, it'll be a perfect thing for us to talk about while we wait for people to kind of wander in. It looks like we're being raided by a party of 63, so that's very cool. So Greyhawk. I started gaming. I started role playing back in with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons when. So we had the little books, but I didn't play with the little books much. Davis did. He got those in 75 or 74. I don't know when he got them. I remember him getting them. I was there with my mom when one of my dad's soldiers gave the books to her for him. So I remember that, but I didn't start for a year or two after Davis did. And I started when he got the Monster Manual. Is that the first one that came out? I don't know. He was running the games. And Davis is my older brother, co-creator of Castles and Crusades and all that business. It looks like we are definitely being raided. Thank you for the raid. Blue Box RPG, very much appreciated. Very, very cool. For all of you joining us, give us a follow. We're going to be talking about Jim's Tricks of the Trade here pretty soon. But right now we are talking about, thank you for the subscription, Blood Wild. Very much appreciated. Burn the trolls out. Talking about Greyhawk's influence on our own published setting. The one I wrote, it's somewhere in this giant drawer, which is the Codex of Air, this giant 300-page monstrosity of a setting. But thanks again for the raid. Very cool. So, I started playing Greyhawk when it came out. I found it the other day. I should have pulled it out for this stream. But Greyhawk came out in this... First it came out in a little white book, of course. And then it came out in this folio edition that had 2 maps. I think just 2 maps in a book, if I recall. And the book didn't have a cover. Davis didn't... He bought it, actually, but he didn't use it that much. He kind of just gave it over to me when I started running games in, 1980 or... When I moved to Germany, we started running games. I started running games. How's it going, Retro? And I dove into Greyhawk like it was no tomorrow. I loved those maps. The maps by Darlene were just spectacular. And that setting, the setting of Greyhawk, it gave you, the end user, with that little book that I had. That's all I had. Not the little bitty book, but the 8.5 by 11 thing that came in the folio. That thing was, it had everything in there to really tease your imagination, to really get you going into it. So I dove into Greyhawk like there was no tomorrow. Gygax created that thing and wrote most of it, I believe, and it was just fantastic. And it was rife with everything that I found interesting in medieval Europe and European history, and all that stuff was kind of woven into it. The Great Kingdom and Keelland and Steric and Geoff and all of these, it was just really, really cool. So we played that forever and ever and ever. We played that. Yes, Lord Gazumber, I'll be in your game, I believe, tomorrow. It should be a lot of fun. I haven't actually wandered into Greyhawk in a while. I cannot stress how fantastic the Greyhawk setting is. And for those of you who haven't ever played it or aren't experienced with it, you really should go check it out. It's just, and I know what was it, From the Ashes, was that the thing that came later in the mid-80s? That was okay, that was cool, that was a nice expansion, but you really just needed what was in that folio edition. It was just awesome. Anyways, to answer your question, M5, so we played Greyhawk forever and a day, and then I began to write fiction, and I began to write adventures. I submitted some to TSR, and I began to kind of create this fictional world of my own. And then I joined the Army in 90, and I stopped playing for 3 years while I was in the Army. Well, I wrote this book called, I can't remember what the name of it is. It's the something song. But that book was where really, the idea in that book is where I created the god Unklar. I wrote his entire backstory and all of that stuff. And in our big game, the whole Winter Dark thing had kind of ended the world of Greyhawk. We figured that we were all leaving college and going off in various directions, and I was in the Army, and the Gulf War was going on, and all that crap. So we ended the game and went on on our merry way. But I started writing stories very loosely based on concepts we created in Greyhawk, and Unklar was one of them, the Horned God. And then I wrote The Voiceless Song. That was the name of the novel. Then I wrote this novel, The Voiceless Song, and created this kind of world. And there was so much of the gaming experience that went into the creation of that world that it was, everything that we had done in Greyhawk was there. But Then later, as I was getting out of the army, and we all kind of clearly were going to end up in and around central Arkansas, we got the whole crew back together. But by then, I'd started creating this new world. So what I did is I basically took the game that we ran from 1985 to 91 and moved it into Aird's, reshaping everything, changing everything, so that there's really nothing left of Greyhawk in the world of Air other than this echo of the game that we played in the 1980s. Though if you look closely, there's certain things that we just couldn't bear to change. There's a very distinctive feel in our game between the Kingdom of Keelland and Kael'mar, and the Dreadwood and the Darkenfold. I mean, that's where we played the most. Beyond that, it kind of breaks up, and you can see things that I did into the world of Greyhawk merged into Air and all this other stuff. But I would say, with all of that in mind, Greyhawk the two biggest influences by a long stretch of the imagination in the world of Air, which is what I wrote, is the world of Greyhawk and the Silmarillion by Tolkien. So you can't really wander through Greyhawk or through Aird and not kind of there's an echo of Greyhawk there, and I have nothing but fond memories about the world of Greyhawk. I mean, it is just absolutely fantastic. I love my own setting. I stand by anything that I wrote, but Greyhawk still is just. I know there's Forgotten Realms and there's all this other crap. There's Eberron. I don't mean to say it's crap. This is other stuff. For those of you not used to my speaking, habits, Greyhawk still has that. What Gary captured in Greyhawk was this simplicity, a simple complexity in there that no other setting's really done. I mean, when you had that little folio and you read about the Great Kingdom, and you read the titles of the Great King, I can't remember what they all were. There were a lot of them. You instantly felt like you were in a Conan novel or whatever you wanted it to be. You could easily project, because it was such a skeleton of it, you could project almost anything in there. Simplicity, there you go, Geek Preacher. You could almost project any type of world setting that you wanted to into the world of Greyhawk. And it just had a feel to it. I mean, it had a feel to it. Part of that's Darlene's map. Darlene, I've worked with Darlene quite a bit over the years. Absolutely fantastic lady, and her art's great, but her cartography skills are evocative. I mean, they go beyond the point of maps, and you're looking at it, and she's got this beautiful blend between, there's old world maps from the 1500s and more technical gaming maps from the wargaming side of things. So, and that was just really Greyhawk turned out to be, I think, the absolute perfect blend for a world setting back in the early 80s, and it stuck. I mean, I really should go get it. Somewhere in the mailroom is this box with those maps that came out of the folio. I eventually had them laminated God knows where I had those laminated, but they're there. It's calligraphy. That's right, Greyhawk Mike. It's calligraphy. That's basically what it is at the end of the day, because she's woven her just the terrain symbols, and the colors are very important in the world of Greyhawk. They're very stark. There's greens and reds, but at the same time, they make you feel like this is the way it is. It looks this way. It's a work of art, and I don't think it gets nearly the recognition beyond us old schoolers who had so much fun with it. But as a piece of gaming art, it truly is. Those two maps rank really high up there. And honestly, thinking about right now, I can't think of a single picture in that Greyhawk folio in the book. I can remember the heraldry on the outside, but I can see her map almost. It's just fantastic. World of Greyhawk, just absolutely beyond. Which is really why when Chuck or whoever hollered at me about attending the virtual Greyhawk Con, I have to do that. That's just awesome. This is sort of where it began for me. I ran all of my games in Greyhawk and then moved them to Aird, and they're all in Greyhawk or Aird. With the only exception was the Castle Zagig map we did for Gary in the Yigsburg book. But yeah, absolutely Greyhawk. All right, well, I have rambled on about Greyhawk for quite a while. M5, I think that was the longest response to a question I've had in a while, but probably maybe not. Who knows? Of course, none of the game group really wanted extended campaigns back in the day. It just seemed to go from one shot to one shot. On mine, Geek, we did, man. We started a We started it in the Wild Coast, and it went over. What is it? It's not the Twilight Wood. Anyways, wandered into there's three. What are the three little duchies next to Keelland? There's Ernst, Ulex, and into the Ulex, and then we adventured into the Ulex, into the southern Keelland. Then we went into the south on those islands that are at the very edge of the map. Popped around those. Then they wandered. It just is. We stayed. We ran a campaign when Todd and I started gaming from like '85. We still play it occasionally. We've moved. That's the one we moved to Aired. That's the one you see in Aired so much. But occasionally we're breaking out. And I kind of have to use Greyhawk terms for Todd. He refuses to move his character out of Greyhawk, so I kind of have to make it up as I go along. It's probably because you were a little older than me. I wanted extended games, but my group didn't really seem to care for it. They played more like mini matchers played it. Yeah, it depends on your group a lot. And my advantage, I played under Davis, my brother, who one of these days we're going to get him to show up at these Twitch things. Davis is a fantastic gamer. It's just... He's so realistic with things. I can remember the day we were playing D&D. We shared a room. We were like, I don't know, I'm like 10 or 12 or some shit. And I had a Vorpal Blade. My 5th level guy had a Vorpal Blade, and I decapitated a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And I can remember Davis's face. One, he loves dinosaurs. But I can remember his face, and he was just staring at the papers and the book. And everything changed at that point, and then this element of realism entered into the game. So that's like in '78. And then I gamed with Davis for a couple more years like that, and it became more and more difficult to survive. my stupid actions frequently. I lost 17 characters in one night. My stupid actions frequently got me killed because they're stupid actions, and it turns out when someone's swinging a meat cleaver at you, it can hurt a lot. So that was kind of my tutelage, is that the right word? Under Davis, so that when I started gaming, I didn't really know when I started running the games, I didn't really know any other way to do it other than to create this arc that you're on an adventure to do these things, and you're meeting people and all of that other googly-goo. Because Davis had woven that crap in there very, very quickly. It was fun. I mean, it was a lot of fun, I gotta say. I don't game any other way. I'll do short adventures at conventions, but generally speaking, it's kind of the same adventure that different people are coming in and out of. I love the Fat Dragon game stuff. I've been backing stuff since they were paper models, and this week I finally got word that my 3D printer has shipped, looking for it. Oh yeah, Fat Dragon is fantastic. Tom Tullis over there, those people are fantastic. Company's great, and they make insanely great. I mean, the products are just cool, and even the paper products are very, very cool. Check out their windmill. It is through the roof often. Fantastic. I like that companies are doing this more. Well, I'm glad, Kim Stepp. We're trying to get into this. Chuck and Tim are dragging me in here to get into scraping, but it's a lot of fun. It's just learning a new medium. Old dog and new tricks and all of that stuff. How's it going, Big Danger? All right, so we've got to start in on GM's Tricks of the Trade at some point. Just for those of you who have joined us, just to let you know, I'm easy to get off subject and wander around whatever we end up talking about. So hopefully we'll do some GM's tricks here, but who the heck knows. If you have any questions, throw a question up in there. I'll do my best to answer it to how I would handle it. But as always with these things, I know a lot of you guys have a lot of experience, and if I'm talking about something and you have a point, throw it in there. I'll do my best to read it, and so that everybody can hear it. It really becomes more of a round robin. Where we're all discussing things. Especially, I do this show on Thursdays, especially that, because it's a lot of grizzled GMs in there who've been doing this for a while. I'm going to tell Tom you're talking good about him. Yeah, old Pickle Tom. That boy likes pickles. So, on these, generally speaking, when we do a GM's Tricks of the Trade, I've kind of got 5 tricks that we discuss, and they're frequently subject-oriented. I'm not going to do that tonight. We're going to kind of dive into just general subjects that, cover everything. And what I want to do is start off with just kind of the type of game. So if you're new to playing, or even if you played for a long time and you're starting a new game, it's usually a good idea to kind of get in your head before you start a type of game. Now, it's a bad idea to get that in your head and stick with it, because the end of this little segment is be fluid. But just get an idea. Are you going to do overland adventures? Are you going to do a campaign arc? Are you going to do one-shots? Whatever it is. And this is going to give you kind of a groundwork for how much you're going to put into it. I tend to do campaigns. It is so rare that I do a one-shot in my Thursday night, or we've moved to Wednesday night, on my Wednesday night games. I mean, it is rare. I don't like them. It seems like a lot of work for nothing, and there's no payoff for me. And one of my huge payoffs as a GM is actually watching players grow their characters and develop new methods of play. I say this all the time in the streams when I watch TV or read a book or whatever. I like to be surprised. Not necessarily surprised by, some main character getting splattered or the red wedding or whatever. That's shock value. That's different. But I like things that are different. And in a campaign arc, when you're running an RPG, over time you get to really watch them evolve. The player evolves to the way you run the game, and then they'll start doing things on their own. They'll get comfortable doing this, comfortable doing that, and it'll catch you off guard. And then that makes it more exciting for you, because it becomes a little more challenging as you have to shift the way you're doing whatever you're playing, whatever you're describing, or wherever they've caught you off guard. So those are the things that I kind of look for when I'm gaming, and it makes it more fun for the GM. It's one of those things I think that frequently gets usually at least one mention of Dr. Pepper. Yeah, there you go. I'm a voracious drinker of Dr. Pepper. But one of those things that get kind of passed over frequently is the GM has to have fun too. The GM shouldn't just be sitting there, adjudicating and telling everyone what happens and what doesn't happen. You want to have fun. And one of the ways that you can have more fun is to create a table wherein the players are actually more interactive. And I don't necessarily mean role-playing. Some people don't like to do that, and that's fine. But just more interactive with the scenario that you've played out. Because at the end of the day, if you sit up there just, telling the story that you have in your head, and they're kind of throwing dice in now and again and kind of reacting a little bit, it's not really as fun as you think it is. It sounds like, this is my world, I'm going to control it. But that's not really the best approach to GMing. Certainly, it is your world, and you do have to control it. But you don't want to make that the kind of the ironclad rules in the game. You really want to create an environment in which they're reacting to you and to your scenario, and then you're in turn reacting to that. Do you recommend a session 0 where GM and players discuss the game's tone and style beforehand along with the character creation? Chad, that is a perfect question, and it leads into point 2. That is absolutely perfect. So, no, actually I don't. So this is what I do. I sort of do. So if you're starting a new game or conventions or wherever, have them make, they're going to make new characters and take a little bit of time, 15 or 20 minutes, to make their characters. And this is my session 0. When they're making these characters out, this is why going in, I want to have a good idea of the terrain that it's going to be in, the season that's going to be happening, and whether I'm going to run them up into a dungeon, or I so rarely do dungeons. Is it a city adventure? Is it an overland? Are there going to be nobles? Is it just monsters or random encounters? Whatever. So you've laid that kind of out in your head, and then you get together around a table. They start making the characters. And that's when I start letting that information out. So if someone's making, there's no rogue. Let's say you're going to do a dungeon adventure, but we'll stick with what I'm comfortable with. Say I do forest adventures and overland adventures 85 out of 100 times. Probably 95 out of 100 times. I so rarely do dungeon in town. So generally speaking, if I'm sitting there and they're making the characters out, and there's not a ranger or a druid in there, I'll say, all right, so we're going to be doing overland. Got a lot of forest in front of me. You probably want a nature-bent character, maybe a druid, maybe a ranger, maybe an elf, maybe a halfling, anything. And I don't want to make them do anything. If they end up with no ranger or druid, that's fine. But in this little 15 to 20 minute character creation process, this is where I'm kind of laying the groundwork. I frequently have to say you're going to need a cleric. I strongly recommend a cleric, or you go to the adventurer's backpack and find a bunch of healing stuff, because this is going to be a combat heavy game, that type of stuff. Anything to kind of get them in the mindset of what's coming. And for the most part, I would say this so rarely happens otherwise, but for the most part, half of your players don't really care what they play. They love the game, or they want to love the game so much they don't give a crap. So they'll make the ranger, they'll make the cleric or the wizard or the rogue or whatever it is that you need. And that becomes the kind of session zero. And the nice thing about it is, and I don't spend a lot of time on it, I don't want to dwell on it too long, simply because they're going to stop listening. You know, I figure I've got like 5 or 6 minutes of dead air while they're rolling dice and whatnot and trying to figure their name out that they're going to listen, and then they're going to stop listening because at that point they're in the equipment process and they're starting to visualize the character, and whatever you had to say is not it's not nearly as relevant as you want it to be because they're making a character, which I think it's this sounds like the craziest thing to say, but GMs frequently forget that character is crazy important to that player as much as your world is important to the game, to you, to the story that you're trying to tell. That character is that important to those players. It's just kind of focused, right? So you can't mess with that character too much. I don't mean killing them. I mean altering them or changing them or whatever. And this is the time that if you don't want, let's say, so my brother Davis hates gnomes, and just don't ever make a gnome in his game because you're going to die. That's just, I mean, he's not even going to purposely do it. You're just going to die. But this is a good time for Davis to say, okay, no gnomes allowed. We're not letting any gnomes, no evil characters, whatever it is that if you have any hard and fast rules, like one for me, and I don't do this at cons, but at the table that I run on Wednesday nights, there's just no assassins. Assassins have no place in my game whatsoever, so just don't make one. If you make one, I'm not going to stop you, but it's probably going to end poorly. Not intentionally, but I'm not going to pull any blows. So yeah, this is the session zero, the character creation process. That becomes the session zero that you're actually kind of explaining everything. Now, I'll do that in pretty quick. Yeah, go me. I'll do that in pretty. Not go me, go Chad. I do that in pretty quick, short, terse sentences. I don't get into a lot of the descriptions. I just want them to know: do they need to buy winter gear? Do they need to, more missile weapons? Whatever. When they're equipping their character and they're kind of creating it. If you're playing a game built kind of around the Mongolian steppes, then you want names that are going to fit that. You don't want the name Steve or whatever. There's probably not many Mongolians named Steve. There might be, but probably not. So these are the times that you want to kind of set the groundwork for stuff that you definitely don't want them to do. Because once the character's created, like I mentioned earlier, that's their little piece of the world, and they're not going to want to change it. And they're going to rebel at changes, especially if forced upon them. I see the banner for the virtual Greyhawk convention. May we get some time frame on the release of CNC system for Foundry VTT? Oh, wow. So, Drab Black, that is kind of out of my purview. I know that we are working on that. That's a Chuck question, Chuck and Tim question. They're managing all the VTT stuff. Yeah, that's Chuck right there, Babunski. They're managing all the VTT stuff for the trolls. I still have my roots firmly in the so this is my part of the company. Though I am the CEO, I don't know what's going on in a lot of corners of this company, which is fine. So it's still an alpha. So there you go. So we are working on it, and I know they've got 2 or 3 different types. Is that right, Chuck? 2 or 3 Luddite? Yeah. I'm getting there slowly but surely. We've got 2 or 3 VTTs, don't we? We've got the Foundry, and there's another company that you've just started talking with, the maps and the stuff. I can't remember. 4 development. There you go. So just to kind of give you the bigger, broader picture of TLG, of course, we do Castles and Crusades as our primary game, the World of Aird and the World of Enzea, and then we do Amazing Adventures Victorious and some other games, Siege Engine and all this other stuff. Castles and Crusades is our flagship product, and right now the lion's share of our energy is going into reprinting the 8th printing of the Player's Handbook, the Castle Keeper's Guide, Planescape stuff, and the Lost City of Gexmoor for 5th edition. And once these things kind of clear out of the pipe, which should be in the next 60 to 90 days, we're going to start giving more attention to things like World Anvil. We've moved the World of Aird to the World Anvil. That you can go subscribe now. GM Strix of the Trade. In fact, we've set up a Patreon. Is that right? Patreon, whatever, however you pronounce that crap. We've set up a Patreon account so that you can access all the other. We've done 63, I think, GM Tricks of the Trade. So there's hundreds of them up there, 200 or 300 up there. Then, of course, the VTT that we're working on. We're looking at more streamlined and more user-friendly PDFs so that you can kind of navigate around the manuscript faster and easier. There's all kinds of stuff that we're tackling digitally, but still at the end of the day, right now, I mean, the lion's share of us is print, and a little bit of PDF, but still print. Yeah, so that's where my attention is. Hopefully, by the end of this year, we'll begin shifting in that direction. And of course, the whole pandemic, coronavirus, COVID, whatever you want to call it, whatever side of the debate you're on the whole thing, none of it matters. We live in a republic, and they tell us what to do. That's the way the republic works. So, but that has kind of propelled us forward into things like this, like the virtual Greyhawk convention, that perhaps we wouldn't have had the opportunity to do otherwise. So we are moving into this brave new world, but we're trolls. We like it under the bridge. We'll get there eventually. Advice for a new player playing for the first time in Greyhawk 1E, 2E as a fighter: should you charge and or stay near casters or weaker characters and hold action to protect? Well, Strange, I'm probably the worst person to ask that question for on a fighter. The fighter is my absolute favorite class to play, and I always attack. I never stop attacking. I'm very aggressive on the field, but as I mentioned before, I lost 17 characters in one night of gaming, so I might not be the best. But you can't really in AD&D hanging. If the fighter hangs back, there's very few other people that can go forward unless you've got, like, the ranger obviously has 2d8 hit points to start with, so they've usually got an angle going forward. So if you've got enough players, maybe. But the fighter really, both in AD&D and Castles and Crusades, the fighter is the yeah. It was a rough day. The fighter he's the guy. He's got to go forward, or the gal, whatever. He's got to go forward and kill the orcs while the spellcasters are doing whatever they're doing behind, while they're wasting oxygen. Spellcasters. Yeah, it was really funny because I was playing. I had just read a bunch of Tarzan, and I was playing kind of a native, and I think there was no armor allowed because the village was primitive X. So I had spears, daggers, ropes, Tarzan type stuff. And after the 17th character died from the same village, Davis said, he goes, all right, we're done. That village has no more warriors of age that you can play. you essentially annihilated the entire village's ability to defend itself, hunt, fight. It was so funny. It was hilarious. I was so mad. It reminded me, what is that movie that came out a few years ago? I got a signed poster, The Gamers. If you've ever seen The Gamers, if you have not, go check. Is it called The Gamers? I can't see it. The damn light's in the way. I think it's called The Gamers. But there's a scene in it where the bard keeps getting killed because he's trying to sing whatever, and he gets killed. And then the guy playing because they do this, they'll show live action and then them at the table. And he keeps pulling out character sheets, and about the sixth time his bard gets killed in a row, there's a pile of bards in the town, and he goes, I can do this all night. It reminded me of my famous sad annihilation of the village scene. Yeah, that's good stuff. Yes, I am playing a fighter tomorrow night. So there you go. It's probably a record somewhere, Chad. Yeah, rogues are good. I could never get into the rogue very much. And they actually, honestly, if you're in a games where your GM is doing dungeon heavy, you probably want to play a rogue because they get to do crap all the time. Rogues are all over the place. It's my favorite race is dwarven fighters. Absolutely love them. I don't know why. I have absolutely no idea. Probably because the first actual fantasy novel I read, I read a bunch of Tarzan books, and who's the Mars guy? Barsoom books. John Carter, but I remember reading The Hobbit, and I fell in love with Thor and Oakenshield instantly. Yeah, I was 9 or 10. I don't know how old I was, but absolutely I love Thor and Oakenshield. So I'm guessing that my love of dwarven fighters comes from Thorin, especially his backstory when you finally get into the Lord of the Rings and the Fellowship of the Ring. Nope. It's Return of the King. The appendix is in the Return of the King. Good Lord. Hopefully there are enough dwarf fighters of fighting the right time. Well, I'm gonna try to stay alive tomorrow. That's gonna be my main goal, is to not get killed. I even play wizards like fighters. I remember Davis was running a game and we got pinned down by some goblins and nobody would go out and fight them. So my first level wizard ran out, cast a magic missile, and picked up a club and promptly died. But that's how it goes for me. Do you often adjust encounters on the fly? When is the right time best way to do that? Okay, that's a great question, Chad. So that's one of the things, I mentioned earlier, when you're just developing the type of game, when you're just trying to decide the type of game you want, whether it's going to be overland or dungeon or fast-paced or heavy action or more role-playing, whatever it is, you've got to be fluid with it. Even though you've kind of laid the groundwork for the players to develop the characters that you want in this setting, and you've set the tone, and you've set, I don't want this or I don't want that. You've absolutely got to be fluid, because frequently you're going to find that you're running this game and it's not going right, or you do a wrong description, or jokes made that kind of derails things and things, whatever. And there's 1,000 things that can go wrong. And what you're getting at is the characters could easily, you overestimate their strength, or the dice go horribly against them and you don't particularly want them to get annihilated. I'm not a huge fan of TPKs. I can't say that I've ever done a TPK. I know I've come close to it, but I'm just not a huge fan of everybody putting so much vested time and energy into characters and then having them annihilated for something stupid. So I very, very frequently will shift encounters both directions. Sometimes they will annihilate your monsters so fast that it's not fun, and it takes the wind out of everybody, and there's no challenge or anything like that. So I always, I'll roll. I'm pretty fluid even in the way I roll up. Most of what I'll do these days is I'll write down 4 ogres, 10 orcs, and that's the encounter. And I'll give them all kind of a standard. If I've run the game for a while and I know kind of what's coming across the screen. For instance, the game I'm running now, I'm running 2 games, but the high level one, they're about 12th, 13th, 14th level, something like that. And the amount of damage that they can do is it's absolutely stunning. It's like, I don't know, it's like 180 points a round if everybody hits and everything works out. It's just insane. Because there's 6 players. So I frequently I'll start monsters with a maximum hit points. They have an 8 hit dice, 8 hit points per hit dice, whatever it is. And that way I can kind of move down or up whatever I need. Frequently you don't have to, but I'll do it in a nanosecond if I feel like I've created a challenging encounter and it's not challenging, or if it's a big encounter that should have real meaning and they're cutting through it too fast, and it's going to take the meaning away, which is going to kind of take their glory away. I'll ramp it up there. And conversely, when I'm just pummeling the characters to death, I'll frequently drop hit points. The only real places that you can do it easily on the fly is the armor class, and that really only applies for humanoids, humans and stuff like that, because you can, though the book can say you have an AC 15, you can easily say, well, this one's not wearing any armor, or this one's, older, and the scales on the system are on the creature, aren't giving. So you can drop the AC down so they have a slightly better chance to hit. But hit points is obviously your best bet on that. Because if you got a monster with 25 and nobody's hitting it and they're just going to all die, you can cut the monster's hit points in half. And I really do that on the fly, and I do it a lot. I mean, a lot. I would say probably not every game, but every couple of games I'm adjusting things just a little bit. I'm a big story guy when I'm running a game. And it's not that it's fixed, and it's not that I don't want to kill a character, because the unique thing about RPGs that, of course, it was carried over into video games. The unique thing about RPGs, and this is I think this is glossed over in just the jibber jabber about RPGs all the time, is whoever's idea, and I assume it was Gary Gygax's, it might have been Dave Arneson's, I have no idea. Whoever came up with the concept of resurrecting your character, that is absolutely fantastic, because you get to come back. You can actually die. It's not the end of it. If you're playing the war game Guns of August and they break through and into the Meuse Valley, you're done. It's over. You're not going to get to resurrect France. You just lost France. But in RPGs, you get to come back. So I don't mind killing characters, but I don't want the encounters to be such that they're not fun, whether that's challenging or whatever it is. I want it to be fun. So I will frequently, to answer your question, I will frequently do it. Especially if you've kind of locked yourself into like a dungeon. They can't get out. They can't go rest up. There's 1,000 things that can go wrong in dungeons. It's one reason I don't like them. Chad, I frequently do that. I am a gentle DM, Steve. Ask Chuck. Yeah, I somehow doubt that. In caverns of Tiskanjashblethberg. What are these names? But that's like our Davis came up with, what was it? Zebog. Dzebbagd. What crazy stuff. Geared Roebuck. There you go. I can say that. That's good. I hope I answered your question there, Chad. What all can a dwarf fighter do as a fighter? Move, attack, special. I think they get more AC against giants is about it. If I made a mistake evaluating the encounter, I tweak. If the party acted stupid, I let it roll. I'm right there with you mostly, Drablik. I ran a game not long ago that almost ended in TPK. I kind of warned them that this is going to be a tough one, so, approach with caution. They did not approach with caution, and they got annihilated. I don't think I pulled or adjusted anything off of that, but I didn't have to. It was already headed towards a disaster. Move, attack, and check stonework. Yeah, there you go. I say, hey, my level 12 Pathfinder character can do 100 hit points around by himself. I know, it gets crazy. So now here's the worst that I've ever experienced as a dungeon master. I was playing Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. So the characters are like 18th level. And interestingly, this is one of the events that made me really just latch onto the idea of adjusting encounters on the fly. So they're 18th, 19th level, whatever, very, very powerful. The wizard was, powerful. So I created this monster that had AD&D's negative hit dice, right? So it had like a -8 hit dice, and I think it was 304 hit points is what I gave it. So this is a strong creature, and his damage was immense. I kid you not. Matt Golden, co-creator of Castles of States, he still sits at my table to this day. They're approaching this stupid monster. He cast Time Stop. He cast Fireball, Lightning Bolt, Delayed Blast, Fireball, Magic Missile, Fireball. He hammered me. He literally did 301 hit points in one melee round, so that when he came out of his time stop and we rolled initiative and Todd won, he had an 8th level paladin, he swung, he hit, and he did like 9 points of damage, and my creature was dead. I was like, what the? Literally was supposed to be this gigantic epic encounter, and they annihilated me in seconds. It was so funny. Absolutely funny. It wasn't at the time. I was a little frustrated, but it taught me a valuable lesson. It's when I created a creature that can travel in the time stream. It only comes down in the time stream. So Mac is very careful when he casts Time Stop now. Because that creature, when you stop time, it summons that creature. It changed that a little bit. Yes. There you go, Greg. Tolkien invented res with Gandalf. Yeah, there you go. I guess that's true. Gandalf comes back after he topples off the mountain with the Balrog. There you go. Well, you know what? That may be actually where whoever bled it into the game, and I assume it's in the original OD&D stuff. That may be where it came from. That definitely may be where it came from. Old Gandalf, bringing out the Tolkien. You're aiming for a fight of about X difficulty, and sometimes the system just didn't do a good job of making it X. The system made it about X plus 3 or X minus 4. Yeah, that's it. That's just it. And now it's actually difficult because I write and design a lot of these monsters and stuff, especially when you get past the 10th level. But it starts getting kind of choppy at the 7th level. To remember the number of combinations that players can use in their spellcasting, particularly, to amass damage and combat-altering stuff is a lot because of the number of spells, abilities, and magic items. So to actually write and plan these things out from a design level is kind of tough. And it plays in perfectly to what you said there, Stalik. When you are on the ground actually playing something that you picked up from a publisher or wherever, or you designed yourself, you can easily get into a pickle with it without a doubt. COT was a fun adventure. Totally I like tweaking stats. Oh, Stalik, I like tweaking stats or having environmental complication over reinforcements. So you just have to remind yourself as a GM and improve as your friend. Chad, that's one of my main things. It's on my list here to actually talk about. One of the 3 things I use the most as a GM once you're into the game is equipment, NPCs, and the environment. I'm an absolutely huge fan of environment. It's one reason that I don't like dungeons, because you have less control. I mean, there's things you can do in a dungeon, from slippery rocks to molds to the quality of air, moisture, stuff like that. But outdoors, there's almost a limitless amount of stuff that you can do with the environment, and you can use the environment, you can describe it, and then use it to impede, help, create flavor, text, all kinds of stuff. I'm just an absolutely monstrous fan of environment. I preach it all the time. If you're running games, it's one of those things, I think, and this is part of this is actually the next thing, this description is one of the things that's forgotten. The main RPG of our era for the last 40 years has been Dungeons and Dragons. And we think Dungeons and Dragons, and it kind of makes people think that's what you're supposed to be doing, but there's whole worlds of adventure out there, from forests to deserts to mountains to hills to bogs, crossing rivers, all kinds of stuff. It just take me to the river. There you go, Rhino. Absolutely. Rhino's been in many of my Thursday sessions on Twitch, and I talk about rivers all the time. But that's the thing. Outdoors allows you to do stuff, and then you can use that environment both to set a tone, to create a pace, to gauge your game. As a good example of that, one of the things I did years ago, I was running a game. In fact, I think it was the first online game I ever did. There was Satine Phoenix and her crew were on, and we were all gaming together, and I was running the game for them, Castles and Crusades, and we ran out of time. It was a 3-hour slot or something, and they were still miles from the house they had to get to, but I just shifted everything because it's all contained or it's all kind of under my control. I just created a hedge in front of them, and they passed through the hedge, and then they were the town in front of them, because I can adjust what I want to do in the environment. When you're outside and not stringently kind of tucked into rooms of a castle or a dungeon or whatever, you can kind of control the flow of things. The other thing environment does is it really sets mood. You can describe trees and rivers, snow, water, rain, heat, all kinds of stuff that's not, kind of just the standard old, there's cobbles on the floor and a dungeon wall and a magic mouth or what have you. So I strongly encourage people to run games outdoors, and it just gives you a host of other things that you can do once you're kind of into it. If there is a river, there must be a frog or alligator who will eat the bard. There you go. Yeah, I use rivers a lot. It's actually one of the things one of my tricks of the trade when you're starting games out, a new game, or introducing someone to the game that you're playing. I recommend that you use a river crossing as one of the first encounters. The terrain can be very challenging and very deadly and very fun, and everybody can kind of associate with it. There's very few people who haven't seen a river, or at least a picture of a river, and they at least understand the difficulty in getting across a body of water. So with a river, you've already created a challenge that's familiar with everybody, so that you don't have to get lost in the intricate descriptions of what a chimera might look like, or a manticore or orc, mentality, or any of that crap. It's a river, and there's water. Water's going from the right to the left. You got to get on the other side. And then the nice thing about it is you've got tons of attribute checks that you can do. Now, or skill checks, or proficiency checks, whatever game it is that you're playing. In Castles and Crusades, and that's my default game, so it's attribute checks, but I believe Greyhawk had skill checks based on the attributes. If I remember, Wilderness Survival Guide, is that right? You rolled beneath your attribute, I believe. We talked about that the other day in one of the things. But so they can get into the river, and you can have them do 4, 5, 6, 7 checks before they get across, and if they miss a couple, you can have them just pulled downstream. There's so many things that you can do to introduce the mechanic of your game to them, while making it fun, while making it exciting, because they still have to get across the river, and it challenges their imagination. They're going to have to kind of figure out what they do to get across the river, create a bridge, build a little raft, flotation devices, whatever it is that's going on. So that kind of just plays in. Outdoor terrain is always a good thing to do. I strongly recommend it. Wait, I'm being sent messages over here. I don't know what's going on over here. Okay. I strongly recommend you do outdoor stuff and don't get hung up in dungeons. Dungeons are fun. Just sprinkle them in. Okay, it looks like we're doing a I guess we're doing a giveaway. Okay, so type in, I'm not sure what we're giving away. Type in exclamation mark and raffle. Let me see. I'll see if Chuck... We are giving a mug away. Is that right? We're giving one of the castle... I'm not sure which mug we're giving away. Coffee mug. We're giving a coffee mug away. So enter the raffle and let's see where we're at. Small dungeons below a castle. Okay. I will do... That's actually... When I do dungeons, I try to keep them small. You know, there's these... If you're going to do a mega dungeon, like I'm creating one now called Alstrag, and it's like 21 levels, but it's a world that I'm really creating inside that with hundreds of tiny dungeons, and it's really kind of an outdoor setting underground. But I try to keep dungeons small, mainly because I think it's easy to lose players in a dungeon because the descriptions get kind of redundant, and the things that they can do, especially if they're not a rogue or a thief, are limited. So you're really just kind of plundering this room and you're plundering that room, and the rogue is doing 90% of the legwork, and until a fight breaks out or there's some magical whatever. So dungeons, I think, have severe limitations on them that I try to avoid, and I always try to shift people away from. They can be super fun. Absolutely, they can be fun, but contained, I think, a little bit better. I don't like mega dungeons for the simple fact that if a mega dungeon has become boring, we've been in this for, that's exactly right. That's exactly it. I think we've got one 90-room dungeon that TLG's published, and it's just too many rooms. I mean, there's not that much variety in it. I think one of the best dungeons I've ever played in, and I've ever, obviously... The Moat House in T1 is going to be top, but Mike Stewart wrote for us Shadows of the Halfling Hall. That to this day, it's like an 8 or 10 room dungeon in it. It's got a few traps in it. It's got a few monsters in it. It's got some undead in it. It's got it's got kind of everything in it in this contained area. You can get in, you can play it in one night session, and then you just go. A 90 or 2 level dungeon with 90 and 180 rooms in it is just too much, and it's just too much. I start running about until they run into something too hot, too tough. Yeah. Well, and I guess it's boring. I mean, you're describing the same thing. It's the same walls over and over again. The same torch sconces, and then somewhere in everybody's head is the ecology of the dungeon unfolding. How do all these monsters get down there? What are they eating? This type of stuff. So I think dungeons, though fantastic, should always be kind of limited. And if they're not, then you really got to create a reason that they're not. It's a kobold warren or something like that. And if it is, if you're going to go big, then you got to give life to it one way or the other by creating ecological systems within that are different enough from one area to another. If you've ever been splunking, it can be very different the deeper you go. Create ecological systems that are going to actually challenge and make things a little more interesting. Otherwise, it becomes this thing. See, what are we doing here? It's the Codex Classicum Stein. I'm sorry, it's not the coffee mug. But there you go. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, Shadows of the Halfling Hall is... and I was looking at that the other day, and I'm going to ping Mike. He needs to write us another one, because it's just another one like that. It's just really... Mike Stewart has his thumb on AD&D and a whole kind of approach to it. He just did a great job with that thing. Now, no, Mr. Obadiah, that's dead on. It's not the size, it's how you use it. So you don't need a giant mega dungeon without a doubt. A big issue with big dungeons is having them make sense and be believable. That's the problem that's another problem with big dungeons, because they don't make any sense. A lot of the monsters in dungeons don't make any sense. And if you're okay with that, that's cool. Some people love that stuff. They don't need any of that crap. They're just killing monsters and taking gold. That's great, but somewhere you're going to have players at your table that are thinking beyond that and trying, because they can't help it. It just doesn't make any sense. Why is this, blah. But there it is. Oh yeah, someone's running it. I think, who's running it tomorrow? I can't remember. Chuck, you're running it tomorrow. Yes, Chuck is running it. Wait, I have an announcement. Chuck will be running Shadows of the Halfling Hall at 10 a.m. tomorrow here at Virtual Greyhawk Con. So definitely check that. That's funny, Chuck. I forgot you were running that. It literally is, of all the published stuff, A1 Assault on Blacktooth Ridge and Shadow of the Halfling Hall are just really great stuff. How's it going, Decimus? Only matters with it. That's right. And I've got a gigantic one. As soon as they said there was something about a Dr. Pepper shortage or something, I went scouring around just to make sure I wasn't going to be out of that. It's something that I can't do without. If there is a zombie apocalypse and we all have to follow Rick Grimes into the sunset, I'm gonna have a rough time of it without Dr. Pepper. It's just not going to be fun at all. Dude, Tractor Trailer Steve is getting ready to sell his Gygax books. Yes, I was. It's all gotta go. Stack them up. Our 3rd edition in battle maps, I feel we lost one of the best elements of dungeons, making characters draw maps. That's funny, Mighty Jabberwock, because I 100% agree with you. Actually, this has been about 6 months ago. I was running some young people in a game, and I had them map out my descriptions, so they had to listen to me. And the map was mostly close, but I remember those days where you had to. Davis would say he's 10 feet down, left quarter, and you drew it. And if you didn't draw it or draw it wrong, you didn't care. Those were the good old days. I agree. I would just scribble the outline on a dry erase board and let them figure it out and how to. Yeah, it's good. Back in the day, I played in Crypt of Lizendred the Mad, and eventually I just started engaging in fights almost before the DM read the book stats because I was so tired of the same thing over and over again. Well, that's the problem with a lot of those adventures. I think, is it B4? B1 is one of my favorite adventures, Descent into the Unknown. One of my favorite adventures of all time. But B4, not before, but B4, I think that's the one that has, like in one room, there's a kobold, in the next room, a fire giant, and in the next room, a manticore. And I was like, I can't do this. You can come join me, Steve. I will be barricaded in a wall, but excellent. I'm on my way, Greg. I'll wait for the apocalypse. But is someone winning something? I think someone might be winning something. All right, well, Chuck's figuring that out. What was I going to go over next? So pacing. So starting the game, we kind of covered a lot of that. Introducing short descriptions. So another big thing. Yeah, Rhino. That's the. We all win by just being here. Yeah, that's the ticket. So one of the things that I always want to impress upon GMs, especially new GMs, engage your players. Absolutely do not dominate the game. You're going to. Instinctively, you're going to want to. You're telling the story. You're adjudicating. You're kind of setting the tone. You're setting the pace. All of this stuff is yours. I think someone won. M5, you have won the Stein. I'm not sure. Whatever we're giving away. You've invested all this time in the game, and it's yours, right? That's kind of how you feel going into it. But you can't go into it that way. You've got to engage the players. And I do it out the gate. When in that kind of session 0 that Chad was talking about, it's the first 15-20 minutes of character creation. That's where I'm already kind of wanting them to create descriptions of their characters and get an idea of what kind of person they're going to do. Maybe a little bitty bit of background. I don't do too much background in the beginning because they might get killed. And I like things to kind of develop, and we're getting at that in just a second. But so when I start a game, when I sit down and we're going to start playing and it's a new game, I try not to give, and I don't always succeed at this, but I try not to give more than a 3 or 4 minute introduction. Just a very quick description of where they are, whether it's snowing or raining or sunny or whatever. A little bitty bit on the world stuff that would only be germane to their characters. So if they're in a roadside tavern, then they're going to know, and if they're from that area, then they're going to know if the road has a lot of traffic on it. And they're going to know if there's a band of orcs to the north. Just very small things like that, just to kind of get it set. I'll do that for 3 or 4 minutes, introduce the game, and then I immediately call for character descriptions. What this does is we've been at the table for 30 minutes. They've spent 20 minutes making a character. As a GM, you've engaged with them as a character or as in the creation process, helping them kind of whether learn the game or develop the character that's going to fit your setting. So they're already kind of envisioning stuff. Then you've described something, and then you've immediately called for character descriptions, and now it's their turn. And I don't ever, the first time they do their character descriptions, unless it gets insane, I don't ever interrupt them. So each player might take 30 seconds. Some might take 4 or 5 minutes. So you can end up with a good 10-minute or so just discussion on what these characters look like. And then if they are inclined, and I try to encourage this a little bit, if they're inclined to role play out a little bit, where they are, sitting in a tavern, approaching a tavern, walking down the road, standing in the dungeon archway, whatever it is, wherever you have them meeting, I'll try to encourage them to actually play that out a little bit so that the table is immediately kind of turned over to the players. And then as we start going forward, I try to encourage all of these things. I ask lots of questions, and I'll do things like, this is one of the things you can't do as a GM. Don't take over their characters. When you take over their characters, when you kind of say, all right, you walk down the road, such and such, you took, what is the term that they're using now in the conversations in the cultural and historical fields? Agency. You're taking their agency away. You're kind of running their characters and saying, okay, you approach the house. Let them tell you they're approaching the house. All you do is say, okay, give me some details on what you're doing and how you're doing it, so I can, blah, blah, blah. And then hopefully one or two of the players at the table will step out and say, okay, this is what we do. And that way, and then maybe if you're lucky, they'll argue a little bit about it and discuss it so that they've actually got some role-playing going without you. You've really kind of hit a nice stride if your players are actually role-playing without including you in it, because that means they're getting into their characters, they're comfortable with your game, they like the setting, they have nothing that's kind of distracting them, and they're trying to unravel the problem that you are presenting or have already presented to them. It's just a really good sign that you've made really good progress. So the upshot of all of this is just to constantly engage the characters, constantly engage them with attribute checks or skill checks or whatever it is. And some of them don't have to have any meaning whatsoever. Or you can even say things like, you can get over that hedgerow without an attribute check. That at least, engages them into thinking they can see the hedgerow and they're kind of part of what's happening. Though I honestly do a lot of attribute checks. Let's see. The kids call it finesse. You finessed their character. Yeah, there you go. Great. There you go. I hear agency a lot. I have to say, I'm an old grizzled bastard and it's new stuff. I'm like, my lawn. But my daughter's in college now and she's working on her history degree, wants to be a PhD and all that stuff. And for those of you who don't know, I was working on my PhD for history when I started the company and quit that mess and started this mess. But to this day, I mostly read history books. I'm pretty caught up. But she came back like second year, whatever, and we were talking about Native Americans and we were talking about agency. And for years I had been talking about this, that, and the other. And she said, well, that's actually what they're calling that is the agency. The authors taking their agency, blah blah blah. And specifically, not to wander off, but too frequently Native Americans are shown from the perspective of, Americans or Englishmen or Spanish or whatever, of being pushed, and they didn't have any say in what was going on. And that's, when you read the histories of all of these nations, tribes, whatever, they had a say in what was going on. They lost the wars, certainly, but they had a say. You can see that say for 300 years easily. And that's agency. So that concept of agency carries over perfectly into the RPG universe. You don't want to take away the player's agency at all. You want them to play that character. I remember one of my GMs, one of the best GMs I've ever played under, he actually described my character crying once. He said, your character's crying. And I'm like, no, he's not. He's not crying at all. I'm not sure why you said that, but I'm not going to cry. It was really kind of funny. Mr. Obadiah, you might have mentioned this before. Do you worry too much about covering a variety of classes in your party, or do you just let the players choose what they want? My new campaign about to kick off. We have a ranger, a magic user, oathsworn warrior, and a monk. Very fighter heavy, no rogue. I try never to push in that direction. I'm like you, Mr. Obadiah. I let it go. I got it's not those classes, but we've got a fighter heavy group now we've got a high level and a low level I'm running, and it's fighter heavy. Now, that's one of the things that, because of that, we created in the Adventurer's Backpack, all that healing crap that's in there, and a lot of ways to use bandages, medicated bandages, medical kits, and stuff just to heal hit points back. Because within a cleric, you're kind of hamstrung. But I generally don't. I generally allow them to do what they want. Now, I do try to kind of cajole it, to finesse it. Is that what we said earlier? To finesse it a little bit, because Really fighter heavy. This is probably one of my biggest weaknesses. I'm sure I've got a lot, but one of my biggest weaknesses as a GM is I forget there's magic in these worlds, which is idiotic. Just a saying that is idiotic. The whole damn thing is magic, right? But I forget about it. And so wizards and priests and stuff like that just don't come into. I like dwarven fighters. So it doesn't come into my play, but I do try to encourage to have some type of magic on that side of the screen. Primarily because two reasons: one, it's a magic-based game, and two, I know that once those spellcasters get to a certain level, it adds such a flavor to the game that it is absolutely mind-numbing. But yeah, I don't. To answer your question, Mr. Obadiah, generally I don't, but I want to. I try to encourage, but if they end up with what they end up, is what they end up with. If that's that early part, that it's tough because you do end up with some crazy ass parties that make no sense. That absolutely make no sense. Green Luton, yeah, just check the channel. Okay, I don't know what that is. Decimus, history books are the best thing to read. Context, they really are. I occasionally read fiction, but mostly I just read history books. I'm reading right now history of the 10th century. Collapse of the reformation of the Carthaginian mess, and good lord, man, those Romans were obnoxious. Those Romans in the 10th century were really just obnoxious. I love the codices. Let's see, contact. Yep, absolutely. Have you done many high seas adventures? No. First off, Jabberwock, that movie. I'm sure you've seen it. Jabberwocky is a fantastic movie. Go watch that movie if you have not. It's not a Monty Python, but it's Terry Gilliam, I think. But Michael Palin, my favorite of that crew, is in there. Jabberwocky is a great movie. The scene where they step in the dragon shit is one of my favorite scenes in all of Hollywood history. Anyways, to answer your question, 2. I've been running games since 80, 81. I know I've run one sea adventure. I want to say there was a second one. There was a second one, yes. So it's a Terry Gilliam. I have run 2 sea adventures. The first one was an unmitigated disaster. Soured me on the whole high seas thing for many, many years. And then the second one, and I did about 5 years ago, I tailored it to fit more of what I was looking for. And here was my problem with overseas adventures. The first one, because I'm such a terrain heavy guy, the terrain doesn't change much other than storm or not storm. It probably does if I was a sailor or in a Navy or anywhere other than Arkansas. I might, I could, maybe some of you guys could correct me, but the terrain seems to be the same. And it's worse than a dungeon. It's worse than anything because if you fall off the boat, you die. And it's just one of those really dangerous terrains to be into. So what I did the second time around that I did it, I kind of based it off of the way the early Greeks traveled around the Mediterranean. They rarely spent days at sea. They went from spot to spot, and camped on the beach or whatever. So the second one, that's actually what I did. They went around this bay area. Actually, they went around the entire part of Arid. But they had to put in every day or so to get fresh water, to get whatever, because the boat wasn't built for that. And that made it more enjoyable for me because I could do some waterborne encounters, a couple of deep sea, because they had to cross a couple of deep sea areas. But then I still had a lot of stuff to do on the land. We did a little dungeon, all kinds of just little stuff that happened. So sea adventures for me they're very challenging, especially if you go deep sea. They're probably doable. And I would probably build it more as a town adventure on a boat as opposed to something else, and maybe do a lot of NPC stuff and thieves and do just that type of stuff. But it can be tough. You fall off the boat, you're dead. Seas can have different characteristics, different weather, etc. But yeah, I'd look to set up islands or coastal terrain. That just makes it more. There's just more that's going on. I think I missed something that Zerathon said. It's like how Baron Munchausen isn't Monty Python, but it is. But that was based on Baron Prezel. Yeah, I absolutely love Baron Munchausen too. Now that's not Michael Palin wasn't in that, was he? Who was? I can't. Now I'm forgetting who was the other Terry. He just died. It was Terry Gilliam and Terry something. The other one just died not long ago. Excellent. Thank you, Blue Box. I don't know what that means, but we appreciate it. Terry Jones. Yeah, there you Yeah, I think he just passed away, I think. That whole crew's just... Man, that whole crew... I watched... not The Life of Brian. The Meaning of Life. I watched The Meaning of Life not too long ago. I absolutely love those movies. Yeah, the terrain changes when you land. And that was really how I saved it for myself. It turned out to be a fun adventure. But again, it was sort of an overland, that moves a little faster. But the island stuff can be really, really cool. And then we did one of those... I did like a Waterworld thing where they came to this kind of pirate cove that was built on this tiny island, all this crap on it, and they ended up going in and out of that. So, yeah, it's like going on a cruise, exactly. So that was a lot of fun. But, yeah, so that's about it. I'll probably do another one in about 5 years. Well, that's just it. It is exactly little episodes that pop along. And it's sort of what I do in overland travel. And when they leave point A and end up in point Y, there's 48 different little encounters and things that they meet. But the thing about the sea is it's got this appeal to it. I suspect that as Homo sapiens, we all kind of have... We're all kind of drawn to water for obvious reasons, and then the sea just, I don't know, it calls to us. It's adventure, it's what's on the other side, can be better than what's here. Grass is always greener, that type of stuff. The waves are always bluer. I don't know, I think that the ocean has this kind of mystic appeal, and if you can actually capture that, then it's more than worth giving it a shot. Capturing it is the real challenge. Today we're going to land on an island of the lizard folk. Next island of 1,000 towers. Sounds about right. Sounds about right. All right, so we talked about, engaging. That's where I think we were jibber-jabbering about engaging. Hold on. Any good rules of thumb for non-combat dungeon encounters like traps and puzzles? Thanks for the great Q&A so far. Thanks. Well, thanks for the questions, Chad. And it's so much easier when there's actually questions coming at me. So on traps, my rule of thumb on traps is to not make it deadly. Traps can be kind of cool, but they can leave this horrible taste in a player's mouth and frequently make people angry. Okay, let me rephrase that. So if they go into something like Grimtooth, if they go into something like Tomb of the... What is the big AD&D module? Man, my memory sucks. I died in it instantaneously. What am I thinking of, Chuck? It's the Lich... whatever. Horrors! Tomb of Horrors! There it is! Good Lord! Yes, Tomb of Horrors. So unless your players know what they're getting into, just a random trap in a dungeon can be extraordinarily frustrating, and it can be extraordinarily disheartening, and just leave a bad taste. So if you've played this character for 4 months, and the character's 3rd level, and you step in this trap, and you get poison in your foot, and then you die, it's so anti-heroic. It's anticlimactic. And at the end of the day, that's what we're all at the table for, is to create epic, heroic moments. I mean, we're trying to live through, the reality of and create cultures and, all of these things of scale and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, we're not there to get killed by a needle. You know what I mean? So when it comes to traps, and I don't do them often, but when I do them, I try to tone down the damage the trap's going to do. That's probably my biggest rule of thumb on traps. And like I said, I don't do them often. Traps don't make a lot of sense to me in a lot of reasons. If I built a dungeon that was to protect my library or whatever, and I put like some pit traps and a couple of, swinging axe traps, my ass would be the first one to fall in one of those pits because I would completely forget about it and fall right into it. And then I'd be going, son of a bitch. But, so I try to tone the trap stuff down. They're fun, though. Traps can be cool because it's the complete and utter damage from the unknown. I mean, it's just suddenly you're okay and suddenly you're not. Or you're okay and then suddenly you're not. So traps, yes, but I tone them down when I do it. Puzzles, it is rare that I use a puzzle, primarily because Sphere of Annihilation. Yeah, maybe back off the Sphere of Annihilation. Catapult traps. As awesome as that would be. And I did tell Davis the other day, my brother, when he dies, I'm going to put him in a catapult and lob his valley into the forest, his body into the forest. I kind of want to see his arms and legs, spindle like that. But for puzzles are a different thing. I've played since the mid-'70s, late 70s, and I have exactly one player at my 2 players that I've played with enjoy doing riddles and puzzles. No one else ever has. I'm sure there's some that have to some degree, but Mark Sandy just got into puzzles. He loved the damn things. He was great with riddles. He could figure stuff out. Really, he's just got a brain for it. But the rest of the people sitting at the table, it's nothing. You throw a puzzle or a riddle at me, my brain is not at all wired like that. We talked about this just this past Thursday. I can't. What was it? What was the riddle we talked about? The 3 legs, 2 legs, no, 4 legs, 2 legs, 3 legs, whatever. I can't. My brain doesn't think like that. If you if you want me to know, if you want me to remember something, you better say it very plain language in a short sentence. My wife has learned that the hard way. Don't begin with an explanation. Don't begin with just tell me what I got to do so that I can go do it, and don't prevaricate about any of it. And that's sort of what riddles and puzzles do. It creates this cool mystique. It creates this cool thing. But if your players aren't bent for it, it can turn frustrating very, very fast, and you can start to lose players sitting at your table. So I would be very, very careful with riddles and traps. Make sure you've got someone like it. See, now I know if Mark Sandy's at my table, I'm probably pretty good to create one because I kid you not, the guy's really, really good at it. So I can go online and pull a riddle down and say it, and he's probably going to figure it out or get close to it. But generally speaking, my players are not bent that way. So I would know your audience and make sure you've got 1 or 2 people there that can kind of unravel it quickly. I'm much more interested in combat tactics or diplomacy than riddles. Yeah, that by far, at the end of the day, catapult sphere of annihilation. There you go. Trap danger should escalate based on player indiscretion. There you go. There you go, Blue Box. Okay, that's just a great sentence. All true, but trap danger should escalate based on player indiscretion. Okay, that's it, Blue Box. You win the internet for the day. That's a great sentence. That's a fantastic sentence. And the stupider you are, the harder it's going to hit. Which is probably true, isn't it? Didn't your dad always tell you that? I love Grimtooth's Ultimate Traps, but I can't see myself using most of them just too nasty. That's the thing. I don't want to annihilate players. Just quick with that Streamlabs bot, whatever. Thank you all for joining us today, and definitely give us a follow if you haven't. I'm much more interested in combat tags. That's how I am. I love combat. I've got a whole thing over. We do a lot of GM tricks of the trade on combat, and because that's at the end of the day, we Excalibur, the Last Kingdom, Vikings, Conan, whatever it is. It's heroic moments. That's what we're trying to create, so that everyone walks away from that table, once or twice a month or whatever it is, with this image in their head of some heroic moment. They scored the touchdown, whatever it is. And with traps and riddles, it's really tough to do that. And few people walk away thinking of that heroic moment. But if they've outmaneuvered the dragon and slain a dragon or whatever it happens to be, that's something they get to walk home with. That's the story, right? And that's what we're trying to do. Do you prefer playing to type, or do you allow player races against type like Elf, Paladins, Dwarf, and... For the most part, I pretty much leave everything on that side of the screen There's a few things in Aird that are Aird specific, like dwarves are not comical relief or any of that crap. Dwarves are a pivotal race in the world's mythology and history and all of that. So there's things like that that I frown on. But if someone wants to play a dwarf that's comical, I don't care. I just try to discourage them. But generally speaking, what's on the other side of the table is on the other side of the table. It frequently bites me in the ass. I'm not a huge fan of half-orcs, so I get those at the table, and I'm not paying attention. The only thing I pretty much put a kibosh on is an assassin. And like Todd, if Todd wanted to play an assassin, I'd probably let him, because Todd's a really good player, and he knows my mind really well, and he knows how to take whatever class that he's playing and kind of manipulate it some, so that it's not an assassin, it's a fighter. It's a dwarf fighter, and I can understand that. But yeah, I generally let players do what they want. It's one of the things as a GM, and I recommend this to every GM out there, don't bother learning all of their rules, all the crap that they can do. The cool thing about that is that when they do something that you didn't know they could do, and it's their ability or their skill or proficiency, it's really cool. As a GM, I'm suddenly caught off guard. I'm the one that now has to think on my feet. We forget all the time, as GMs, we always forget that players are constantly having to make life and death decisions based on descriptive text, right? Based on just limited data. not even the five senses that you and I have if we go out into the woods hunting or something. All they've got is their imagination and what they've heard. So many life and death decisions are being made by players continually. And I'm not saying it's stressful. They're all, it's just a piece of paper, so it shouldn't be too stressful. Hopefully it's not too stressful. But I would like some of that fed back to me. So when they come at me with a spell that can do X or an ability that can do Y, it's really cool. And that puts me in the same position that they are now in. Now I have to make a life or death decision based on a limited amount of data. And it's cool. So generally speaking, I try to leave as much player content on the far side of the screen as I possibly can. Obviously, over time, I learn what these classes can do. And if I catch someone cheating, which is, I don't know that I've ever caught anyone cheating, I just course correct it. I don't make a big deal of it. I just course correct it and move on. But generally leave it across the screen. Traps can be fun to deal with, depends on whether they make sense. Few traps make sense. Very few of them do. I'm sure in Grim Tooths it's kind of described, but most traps make absolutely no sense. It's why most hunters use very simple traps, do a simple snare or a pit to capture animals. Agreed, it should make sense why someone put it. That's the big thing about traps. Why in the hell is there a pit in the middle of the hallway? That makes absolutely no sense. Nobody can go, I want a glass of water, I get up, I fall in a pit trap. That's just absolutely ridiculous. Okay, so what are we doing? There's an announcement going on. Did Gygax do any write-up on traps puzzles in the books he did that you published? I don't think so. The only book that there might be some traps in, and I don't think there are, is The Hermit. That's my favorite Gygax adventure. But that one's got, it's got sort of, you get shrunk down at one point, but that's not really a trap so much as a spell effect. I don't think so. There may be some. There's probably some in Castle Greyhawk that I'm not remembering. But is that the first one we did? What's the box set? Jesus, I can't even remember what we published. Try to discourage comical dwarves with traps. There you go. Life is hard. It's harder when you're stupid. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so Bloodwall, I don't think so. Gary didn't buy into that too much either. I love this approach the most even. Heroic moments are the glory of the game, which creates the requisite need for a moment of ignominy and fatality to make the heroes more cherished. It does, and that's one reason my games tend to be very tough. I do con games a little different, but I don't make things easy. I don't make combat that easy, and I want it to be bloody. One of the things I talk about Jim's Tricks of the Trade all the time is descriptions. You can actually make a game more heroic and seem tougher than it is and seem more dangerous than it is with carefully placed descriptions. A cracked collarbone, broken equipment. We're running out of time, but one of the main things I talk about all the time in GM's Tricks of the Trade, it is something that flows through all of my games, is equipment. I want the players to equip their characters carefully. I want them to buy what they have so that it has value. They've spent their money on it, and then I'm going to promptly destroy it. You take a giant's club and it smashes into a breastplate, it's going to get dented. A lizard, the lizard king claws your back, it's going to rip open part of your backpack and tear the straps. And this is damage that you're doing to the character. It's excitement that's happening in and around the combat, but it's actually not damaging the character or killing the character or ending the game too soon. It's creating this whole set of tension and all of this stuff. It's creating the struggle. It's the Thorin Oakenshield. He had to pick up the oak, right? The oak branch because his shield broke. It's that heroic moment. And I use equipment as one of the main things that I do to create that heroic moment. Descriptive text and equipment. And you can make your game seem very tough, harder than it is, without actually slaughtering the characters. That said, they still need to take damage. It still needs to be challenging. It shouldn't just always be a walkover. Really, I could go on about this for another hour. Combat as a whole, it's a major part of my game. I do spoiling attacks. There'll be battles that go so fast that the characters come out of it insanely confident, and I'll do that for 5 or 6 games in a row, just to kind of soften them up, so that when something horrific happens, they're a little bit caught off guard, and it scares them that much more because they don't know what's happening. There's all kinds of tricks and things that I do that actually to propel that emotive response, and that's what you're talking about, Blue Box. That emotive response and fear of death absolutely has to be there, or the game's not fun. If they succeed, and here's another huge thing that I do. Sometimes they don't succeed. sometimes the adventure did not play out with their successfully cleaning. Shadows of the Halfling Hall is actually one of them. One of the moments in our game that they never finished that. It was too hard. They had to get out. And they retreated from it and never finished exploring that dungeon because they got too chewed up in the first sections of it. And that's okay. Some of those defeats, it works in a campaign obviously better than one-shots, but some of those defeats create that whole foundation so that when there's a success, it's a real success. It feels like you really did something. Let's see. Some of the hardest is unlock some of it systematic manipulations. A lot of it's continued poor life. that's it right there. That's about. I think that could be said for real life and RPG life. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the system's against you, and sometimes you're just an idiot. Out of curiosity, why no assassins? Well, I never do. I mean, I shouldn't say never. I'm trying to do one now, actually. I tried, and they left the town. I never do town adventures. I rarely do. And one of the reasons I don't is my games are NPC heavy. I use NPCs all the time. I use them to propel the game forward. I use them for just an astronomical number of things. Set tone, set description, pacing. Help the players, hurt players. It's the perfect conduit for information from a GM. NPCs should be everywhere. With that in mind, when I go to town, I've got 7,000 NPCs and because my players are the way they are, they constantly talking to people to get information. They want to talk to this NPC. It's one reason that in my drawer here, I've got Gary Guy's extraordinary book of names, so I can just pull names out of the hat all the time. But because I don't play towns and villages much, there's no reason for an assassin in my game. If you play an assassin in one of my overland games, there's a really good. You've got no skills that are going to help you against the whatever wandering monster that's come across the plain. You're going to get killed. And you end up with a player sitting there, I have in the past, you end up with a player sitting there who's doing nothing and bored. And one of the things you don't ever want to have happen at your table is bored players, especially in today's world. It was bad in the 1980s. Today it's horrible because if you get a bored player, they're going to slip this little device. I don't know where my camera is. They're going to slip this little device. They're going to be down in their lap, and they're going to be looking at something, and then it's done. They're going to get on YouTube, download a video, and start laughing, and then your table's going to get just knocked down on a whack. So assassins really have very little role in my game. If you're really creative, you probably could play one and give it a better voice. But assassins generally, they're generally murderers. It's kind of they lack that heroic element that I like. Monks are kind of in that vein too, but the assassin, both in my game and just the general idea of it, I don't like it. So that's kind of why I've tossed them. Let's see, it can be stressful. What is your opinion of box text? My players all going to go save versus box text. Yeah, I rarely read it. We put it in some of our adventures, but I know that most GMs don't read it. I rarely read. I kind of know whatever I'm playing. If I've got an adventure that's overland, then I will just take it and paraphrase it. And I think most of our published adventures say read or paraphrase the following. Because you don't, and you never really, the whole idea is to engage, right? You want to engage the players, because just like I said a moment ago, you don't want to lose anybody. You don't want anyone to get bored or wander off. And if you're reading 3 paragraphs of text, if they're going to get bored and wander off, they are, at least half of them. And especially if you start doing it like this. You don't. You want to look at them, and you want to talk to them, and you want to describe the forest, the moisture coming off of the leaves and the dew on the ground and whatever it is. You want to immediately conjure an image in their head. You don't want them to think that you're reading something. So, I avoid it at all possible in any times. If a GM doesn't describe something that characters would surely have spotted that breaks verisimilitude. Man, that's a big word. It's a big word, Decimus, for me. Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's kind of the descriptive text is funny because you describe it, and the hard thing about describing text is they're going to miss some of it. What? I didn't hear that. What? There's a tree there? That type of stuff, and that's the hard part with any of these descriptions. It's one of the reasons that I use, and I talk about in this GM's Tricks of the Trade. I'll use keywords. So, like if I'm describing a forest, I'll say maple trees. I'll say. I try not to go with everybody knows an oak, like a beech tree or a cypress tree, Of course, a cypress tree's in a river, but I try to use very, very pointed words because if you say something like that, there's beech trees. People are they don't know what a beech tree is. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But it's a word that you have a better chance of capturing their attention with, as opposed if you just say, there's moisture falling off of the leaves on the trees. The beech trees are hanging heavy with moisture. So they're immediately they're kind of what? Just anything like that. Thatch, shingles, anything that kind of colors to, anything that makes them refocus on what you're doing can help with that missing descriptive text decimals. It's hard though. Now, I do recommend, where is it? I don't even know. These books are going, I don't know if you have them. These books are going for like $500, but that book is perfect for the GM. It's probably the best GM's guide ever made. Gary Gygax's World Builder, and it's just filled with just words. Some of them is defined, some of them aren't. And it's just a great book. Strongly recommended if you can get a hold of it. Did you ever talk to Gary about? Oh, yeah, wait. I think I rolled back. If his thoughts on them changed. We didn't talk about much. This is what I do know about Gary. By the time I started working with him, Lucid, he absolutely hated writing adventures. He didn't want to do it anymore. He was tired of it. He wanted to do the Gygaxian Fantasy World Series. He wanted to create the Legendary Adventures game. He had some board games that we were doing. He wanted to get gourd stuff out. He wanted to do everything but write adventures. I got him to write a couple. He wrote Hall of Many Pains, and then, of course, Castle Zagic, but he just didn't want to do it. So we didn't talk too much about traps with him. He just didn't want to do it. Hi, Stephen. Question for you. Where do you see Trollard Games 20 years from now? Canadian Ancient Gamer, we're in our 20th year now. I never would have thought we would have made it this far. I still thoroughly enjoy the company. The crew's bigger than it's ever been. I would like to still see it cooking right along. It's just, I would like to see us grow into video games, and that we're kind of pushing in that direction a little bit. I'd like to see some of our properties move into more traditional forms of entertainment. That would be kind of cool, and we're trying to push in that direction. I don't know. I think we could still be doing this. This is a lot of fun, and the nice thing about what's happened to me personally, and there's probably some other people out there like this. I started this company in 1999 with Mac Golan and my brother Davis. And in those days, we still there was offset printing and blue lines. The internet was working, but it wasn't anything like it is now. So I've watched this company change from in those days, 93% of our business went through distribution. Now it's less than 2%, because there's so many more avenues of marketing, right? Of selling, of moving, and of engaging with people and all this other stuff. That it's changed the entire market. And now we're watching it propelled a little bit by the whole pandemic mess. We're watching it just forcefully, what do they call it? This pandemic is called an accelerator. I think that's what they call it. It's an event that forces society to do something, and that's what it's doing. It's definitely forced me into this new venue, which is really kind of cool. So hopefully we'll still be sitting around here with some old gray hair, talking off. The last cheating player that was cheating, fudging, I started rolling their rolls in the open. He called me out on it. I told him that I was rolling out in the open because I couldn't see their rolls. The behavior self-corrected, but it was just a course. Yeah, that's Orion, that's the best way. If someone's cheating at your table, I agree with that completely. Don't call them out. Don't make a big deal of it. I try to engage some of the other players around them to get them to kind of fix it so I don't have to be involved at all. That's a great way to do it. Let's show our rolls for a few games, see how this works. Most people, if they do cheat, they're cheating out of frustration. I mean, come on, it's a role-playing game. But calling them out is just never a good idea. It's going to end in a horrible argument. You don't want it to. I remember in a 1E having to save all your magic items when you drag. Oh yeah, the good old days. I actually created a monster for Monsters and Treasures of Air that had its breath weapon is dispel magic, so just to destroy magic items. How about fixing with a mending spell? What are we? I missed something. What are we fixing with a mending spell? Lord only knows. Okay, wait. Are we raffling again? I think something happened. Have you ever run a campaign versus characters being heroes? They are once. It was horrible. It was fun, but it was horrible. It brings the worst out in people. So I try not to do evil games. It just brings the worst out in a fun way. I mean, nobody was whatever, but it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. I prefer the good guys type thing. Yeah, evil can be fun, though, if you don't let it get out of hand and get too insane. Did Steve just hold up the raffle item? But wouldn't that be nice? I do think someone showed me that those things, these GFW books that we put out 10 years ago, are going for like $400 and $500 on Amazon or eBay or wherever. It's just absolutely crazy. They're good books, though. I gotta tell you, on the 20 years. Oh, yeah. There you go, Chad. We need a little mending as our hair turns gray and things begin to break down. All right, so I think we're doing another raffle. Torn equipment. Oh, yeah, mending on torn equipment. Mending is one of those spells that I wish people would use more often. And for that very reason. People who play at my table pretty regularly know equipment's going to get destroyed, and they keep money packed away for it, and unless they're smart enough and have mending. Absolutely love that spell. Let's see. We're fixing life with a mending spell. Yeah. I think that sometimes seems what's happening. You know, I've always said I love my country, the Constitution, the whole lot of things. But Americans, we're not easy. We don't like to be governed, and we're not easy to govern, and therefore our government is. We muddle along. So I guess it's all right. I ran an evil session, then took their characters and made them their arch villains. Oh, no, that's cool. That's pretty cool. Now, and then you could do another game where people are hunting them down. I like that concept. That's cool, man. Yeah, just weave it into it. If you're going to do it, go all in. That's cool. That's very, very cool. Steve likes breaking equipment. Don't tell my current CK. I don't want him getting ideas. Yeah, I destroy equipment constantly. Love it. And that's actually going to go in this. I made a note Wednesday night. We were playing and I destroyed some chainmail and they immediately wanted it fixed and a sword sharpened. And I made a note in the CKG, one of our better books we publish around here. I don't know the hell the damn thing is. The Castle Keeper's Guide. It's another one of these huge things. It's filled with all kinds of just stuff for game masters. And I'm fixing to put a chart in there, how much it costs to sharpen swords, fix armor, or whatever. Let's see what I won. Woo! Oh, Grape Ape, you won! Congratulations. And that's what happens when a nation is founded by rebels. Exactly. I mean, we don't like to be governed. And you can kind of look at American history. We settled along the East Coast, and government started to form, so we moved to Kentucky area, and government started to form, so we moved to the Arkansas, Missouri government. We moved to the West. Finally, we're like, screw it, I'm going to Oregon. And we went all the way to Oregon. And then they formed government over there, and then they started coming back until they settled Nebraska and Kansas. Yeah, we just don't like to be governed. You got to take the good with the bad. It's just the way it is. Yeah. Well, I'm off to surprise birthday party. Great talking to you, Strange. I think we're a little bit over. We're going to be wrapping up here in just a minute. Sometimes to our detriment, but we will soldier up and fall in when the chips are down. Absolutely, or no, it's who we are. It's just the way Americans behave. We carry on through the good and the bad. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Someone said that up there. What was it? So one of you guys, I think it was you, Orno, said something about luck and stupidity or something. And, it'll all work out. DMs and players make it flexible. I don't think it's the job of the game to do that. That's a great statement there, too. Absolutely. Absolutely. Greyhawk Con, great start to it. Thanks, Strange. Thanks for stopping by. Sure appreciate it. I may have to see if I can wager that coupon. Game tomorrow and double it. There you go. I like the idea of having time and cost for fixing, sharpening stuff. Yeah, it's just some of those. I want everything in the... everything that I have to look up quickly, room costs and all of that crap, I want it in the CKG, and then move it to some screens because I don't want to have to think about that stuff. And they're always haggling with me, and I don't haggle well. So my stupid players are always haggling with me, and Mac knows I can't haggle, so he says crazy stuff, and I can't keep up, and it just pisses me off. So, one of these days. Children Game, any more short films in the works like Emmy and To the End? I talked to the director of those two films just yesterday. He lives in my neighborhood. We were driving by. His business is kind of shut down because of this mess outside with the bacteria or virus, whatever's happening. And he said, hey, let's get together and do something. So I'm going to pull out some of these scripts. I had a third one that went with that, and I'm going to shoot it to him hopefully sometime next week and get started back on that. I loved those two little films. I loved doing those films. I loved everything about it. And I think the outcome was fantastic. Chuck, can we throw those up in the feed real quick? Or Tim? Absolutely love those things. And I got to tell you, this is my favorite story off of the sets. I didn't do anything. I was the producer at Trollard Games, the producer. And Jabberwock, we're going to get them in the feed here in a minute. Chuck, I think Tim's gone. Could you get them up in the feed? This is the coolest thing. And for those of you out there who are actors or directors or any of that stuff, this was just really cool. I got to produce, so I just sat in a chair and watched everything unfold. And while there was 3 professional actors and a professional director, I mean, all these people make their careers doing this stuff. And there's a scene where the one character, now the character's names of kind of the older guy, he looks around the side of a building at Megan's character. And the director, I was sitting there in a chair just watching it, and keep in mind that originally Davis and I were going to play the roles in these short films. I am an actor based in LA looking forward to checking. Very cool, chat. So what was really cool about it is the director's off over here and Megan's over here, and I can't remember his name. Sam. No, it's the other guy. Anyway, is here on the corner. And he says, okay, the director says, okay, Sam, give me surprised. Give me horrified. Give me humorous. Give me sarcasm. And it was about 8 or 9 things, and the actor, and this was so cool to me, the actor would step around the corner, change his face, and look back around the corner. And then they'd step back around the corner, change his face, look back around the corner. It was pure awesome. It's the first time I actually saw an actor doing their craft. You know, I watched The Walking Dead, so I get to see the end result. And I don't like to watch behind-the-scenes stuff because it ruins the show for me. But it was the first time I actually got to see the actor doing their craft, and it was nothing less than astounding. My respect for actors went through the roof because I was going to be the guy doing that role, and there's just no way. I got one smart-ass look on my face, and that's about all I could do. So it was very cool. I definitely check it out. And then the other one, you know, I wrote the scripts for those things. So he's Mighty Jabberwock is a stunt sword fighter in the air. Oh, very cool. So the other side of that experience, I wrote the scripts. And the actors and the director, they made changes to it. And I was perfectly fine with that. Primarily because I saw them actually doing the form. And there's this scene in Emmy where Megan's character has to talk to the little girl. Now, she rewrote a little bit of that, and I think she did it on the fly. I don't think she sat down and made notes. I think she just kind of did it on the fly. And what the words that she says were better than the words that I wrote because she's in the moment. She's living this kind of mothering moment with this lost child in the woods. And when I saw her do that, I was just... Megan's got a Facebook page. You should definitely follow her. Just absolutely... I was just floored. Absolutely floored. Watching actors in their craft is... actually do it is just really kind of cool. The director, too, and it was... like I said, I don't like it behind-the-scenes stuff, but it was just really kind of cool watching that stuff. Each of them were like 3 or 4 minutes long, maybe 8, I don't know, whatever. Check them out. There was going to be a series of them, and we got distracted with 12,000 other projects, but check those 2 short films out. Some of the stuff that I'm most proud of that we've done around here. And God knows in 20 years we've done all kinds of crap. So definitely check them out. A lot of fun. Well, I think we're supposed to wind down here. I think we're a little overtime, actually. I want to thank everybody for coming out and joining us. This has been fantastic. Please give us a follow if you haven't. And remember that we do this every week. We're here 4 o'clock every Thursday doing GM's Tricks of the Trade. We would love it if you joined us. We're here every Tuesday at 4 o'clock doing Ask Me Anything. We just kind of do a round robin of mess. And definitely please join us on Tuesday. Wednesday nights we have the Haunted Holler painting. Where we come out and we're painting miniatures, professional painters showing us, how to do it, what to do, all kinds of just good tips on that and whatnot. Chuck Babunski here, he runs games on Saturday. Tomorrow he's got a game at 10 a.m. at Shadows of the Halfling Hall, so definitely in here at Virtual Greyhawk Convention. Definitely join us for that. And lastly, I'm in a game at sometime tomorrow, I think 6. It's too much announcements. It's too many announcements, Chuck. It's too much stuff. My brain is too small. 5 p.m. maybe? I don't know. It's sometime tomorrow. Hold on, I'll get it. At 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, I will be gaming. There we go. And I think, thank everybody. Thank you guys for showing up. This has been fantastic. Thanks for the questions. Love every bit of it. And we will breathe. My Dr. Pepper's gotten hot while I've been jabbering. I can't... I need a little bit of energy drink there. All right, Chuck. I've read the announcements. We're good. Do I need to do anything? Are we rating or signing off or whatever? Thanks. Thanks, Rhino. Thank Nick. Everybody, thanks for showing up. I'm kind of waiting for Chuck to tell me what to do. He's just hang. We will raid into him. Okay, so we're going to raid Lord Gazumba, I think. I believe that's what's happening. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, so... Is that what's happening? I assume everybody knows what's going on. You know, it's one of the funny things I have found when we're adjusting, obviously with the pandemic, we're gaming remotely on my Wednesday night game, and I'm adjusting to the camera and the microphone, but I have found that when I'm trying to hear someone, Todd or Mac or Chris or whoever talking to me, I lean forward as if somehow I'm getting closer to them. I'm not sure what I think I'm doing, but it's not. It has no effect on anything. I don't know. Trust your moderator. There you go. That's our GM in this situation. We will trust the moderator. I don't know how exactly the raids work. I think we have to go over there. Or are we sent over there, Chuck? I'm not sure. Hey, everyone, just a reminder, we appreciate it, blah, blah, blah. I can say when you lean forward and talk, we can hear you clear. There you go. Well, what I've done, so I got this new mic. So here's the mic, right? But now watch it, if it'll do it. Oh, well, shit. Now it's staying here. Normally, when I pull it over, it slowly goes back. So I don't have the tension set. How's that? So maybe that. Now you can't see it. Is that better? Is that better, Grape? Can we hear that a little bit better? Just keep leaning forward. There you go. All right, so I'll try not to touch it. It's just right there. Okay, here we go. Looks good. Okay, all right, so we're off. When do I sign off there, Chuck? I think the raid has begun. We are going to Lord Gazumba. Now, okay, all right, everybody, thank you all for showing up. Very much appreciated. You'll have a great and wonderful weekend.